Good evening. It is time for today's Tax Talk. I'm your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. It is Thursday, April 28th, the year of our Lord 2022. I forgot to change the caption underneath this. But we're talking tonight about, have you heard about the PRO Act? That should be a capital PRO Act. The Protecting the Right to Organize Act that was passed last year by the House of Representatives. That's what we're going to talk about today, and how it affects taxes, because this is today's Tax Talk. Won't you join us? Okay, so as I mentioned, we are going to talk about the PRO Act. It's amazing, all these. It's not unusual when one party controls all the apparatus of government that they want to ram everything through right away when it gets in. So many acts were passed last March. We talked a lot about the Cash App that was passed during the American Rescue Act that was passed last March, and there's so many provisions within those acts that don't come to light until later. Many times we're kind of remorse, right? Buyer's remorse, because I didn't know that was in there. And again, the Nancy Pelosi, we got to pass the act to find out what's in the act. And that's when you find out. Now, the PRO Act, which is, again, the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, was passed by the House, but was not passed by the Senate. Doesn't look like it will be. But it's still up. It was passed. Actually, it was passed in the previous Congress also, and because at that time the Republicans ran the Senate, it didn't go anywhere in the Senate. But then with the change, it was passed last year. It didn't pass the Senate again, although they're still pushing for it. They want to get it through. But I wanted to point out what's going on in these acts, these large bills that go through Congress that have so many provisions that nobody knows about. And here's one. This is the one, the PRO Act. So first, I want to talk. Let's talk about what the AL. Let's go back here. Now we go back. No. We can go talk about what the AFLCIO has to say about the act. The PRO Act is the key to America's future. The key to America's future. Now, in disclosure, I was a member of a AFLCIO union, as was my father, as was my grandfather. So let's see what they have to say. The PRO Act is the key to America's future. The Protecting the Right to Organize Act restores the right of workers to freely and fairly form a union and bargain together for changes in the workplace. It is a landmark worker empowerment, civil rights, and economic stimulus legislation, and an essential part of any plan to build back better from this COVID-19 pandemic and recession. So we always use the pandemic and the recession about, that's why we need all these things. As the collective strength of workers to negotiate for better pay and benefits have eroded, the gap between rich and poor has reached levels not experienced since the Great Depression. The result is an economy that does not work, where the vast majority of the people lack the incomes of the economic security to consume or invest. More and more of American workers want to join a union. I don't know where they get that stat. A recent study found that nearly half of all non-union workers, more than 60 million people, would join a union today if given the chance. This shouldn't come as a surprise. When working people come together in a union, we can negotiate for higher wages, better benefits, and working conditions. And we also have a real say in critical workplace issues like time off to care for a loved one and the deployment of technology and protection from all kinds of discrimination. Okay, so that's the AFL-CIO take on the act. And this is just news from the House passes the Protect the Right to Organize Act and sends it to the Senate. This was last year, March 9th, 2021. With no major, let me kind of blow this up so we can see it better. There we go. One more. With no major labor reform since the 1930s, Democrats are seizing on the opportunity to strengthen workers' rights, including the ability to unionize. The House voted 225 to 206 Tuesday to pass the Protect the Right to Organize Act, or the PRO Act, the most pro-worker labor reform in decades. According to the bill's sponsors, it faces an uphill battle in the 50-50 split Senate. President Joe Biden has said labor reform is one of his administration's top priorities. As a presidential candidate, Biden stressed that he would be the most pro-union president you've ever seen. Last week, while Amazon workers gathered in Alabama to vote to unionize, Biden called it a vitally important choice. As America grapples with the deadly pandemic, the economic crisis, and the reckoning on race, what it reveals is the deep disparities that still exist in our country, Biden said on Twitter. I urge Congress to send the PRO Act to my desk so that we can summon a new wave of worker power and create an economy that works for everyone. The PRO Act would strengthen workers' rights to strike for better wages and working conditions, strengthen safeguards to enable that workers can hold fair union elections, and allow the National Labor Relations Board to fine bosses who violate workers' rights, the rights that they just created. The House passed a version of the bill last year, but it was dead on arrival in the Republican-controlled Senate. This time, Republicans are all but certain to filibuster the legislation, which many major business groups oppose. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says it would destabilize America's workplaces and impose a long list of dangerous changes to labor law. Okay, so that's where they are. So here's a story from today. This is what brought it to my attention. I had not, to be honest with you, I didn't know anything about the PRO Act. I hadn't heard anything about it. And again, I usually keep an eye out for this kind of stuff. And so, but I did read this story today in the Hill. So let's go back to this story in the Hill. But Biden's PRO Act is a covert tax hike on 7.7 million Americans. Again, I wanted to give you both sides of this story, that these are all great things that the Biden, who doesn't want to help the working person, the working, and the working people should get. All of that is true. Whether unions are the way to do that or not is debatable. And so one side said that it is, and this side says probably it isn't. So let's read this. The Biden administration has demanded trillions of tax hikes on the American people, despite President Joe Biden's campaign pledge not to raise taxes on anyone making less than $400,000. New research shows that the Protecting the Right to Organize Act violates Biden's tax pledge by raising taxes on 7.7 million Americans, 96% of whom make less than $400,000. There are plenty of reasons to oppose the PRO Act, which rewrites American labor law in favor of union bosses at the expense of workers. It nullifies right-to-work laws in 27 states nationwide, forcing workers across the country to choose between putting food on the table and kicking up dues to the union boss. It forces employers to disclose sensitive employee contact information to organizers during union drives, opening workers up to harassment at all hours of the day and night. Thanks to a new study from the Americans for Tax Reform, the Tholos Foundation, and the Beacon Hill Institute, we now know that the PRO Act is a massive tax hike on millions of Americans. How is the PRO Act a violation of Biden's $400,000 tax pledge? The PRO Act contains a stringent three-part ABC test to determine if a worker is an independent contractor. This is important. or a W-2 employee. Under the PRO Act, businesses must prove that a contractor is A, free from control or direction. That's kind of where it is now. B, doing duties outside the usual course of work of a hiring entity. That's new. And C, customarily engage in an independently established business of the same nature of the work performed. They have to work for more than one person. Under Part C, an individual must be providing services to more than one client in order to be considered an independent contractor. The practical effect of the ABC test is to force the mass reclassification of millions of independent contractors into W-2 employees. This would damage every Uber driver in America. Workers have seen this movie before. California enacted an ABC test as part of the Assembly Bill 5, which the governor signed into law in January 2019. The test was so reviled that nearly 59% of Californians voted to implement an exception for rideshare drivers in November 2020. Rideshare drivers aren't the only Americans that work as independent contractors. Court stenographers, florists, ballroom dancers, auctioneers, doctors, dentists, financial professionals, and veterinarians all work as independent contractors. The study uses IRS data from the Treasury study to calculate taxes on a sample of independent contractors. The sample comprises the 4 different types of independent contractors most likely to be reclassified if the PRO Act became law. The population size is 13.81 million independent contractors with 1099 income, with the sample size of 1%. The study assumes that both the independent contractor and the employee take the standard deduction and computes the tax differences from there. The results are striking. Based on the sample, a nationwide ABC test would lead to 7,749,443 workers paying more in tax as W-2 employees than independent contractors. It is important to note that independent contractors already pay taxes. The reclassification would lead them to paying a different mix of taxes, resulting in a higher overall tax burden. As the study notes, BHI found that 56% of independent contractors most likely to be reclassified would pay more tax as employees, which we estimate to be about 7.7 million taxpayers. We estimate that 96% or 7.5 million of those reclassified taxpayers would pay more tax make less than $400,000 a year. The study uses the best available data from 2016 to reach these conclusions. Due to the rising popularity of the gig economy and workers turning to side hustles to make ends meet during the COVID-19 pandemic, the real number is likely much higher, according to Upwork's Freelance Forward 2021 study. An estimated 59 million Americans engage in some form of freelancing. Using that number, the study assumes that 33 million Americans would pay more in tax if reclassified as W-2 employees. The PRO Act has been one of Biden's top priorities despite the fact that it has yet to move in the Senate. The PRO Act's ABC test is a clear tax hike on millions of Americans, 96% of whom make less than $400,000 per year. If Biden is serious about upholding his pledge, a central part of his presidential campaign, he would kick the PRO Act and the ABC test to the curb. Is that true? Well, I think it's probably true on both sides, right? It's true that organized labor thinks it's a good thing, and it's also true that those that are looking out for taxpayers warn us that many would pay more taxes. That's true too. My point of this story is that there's so much in all of these bills. We don't need these big bills that have so many provisions that nobody even knows about, right? Everything should be debated, brought to transparent, brought to debate, and then voted on. How many votes in Congress now are on bills that nobody has ever read, right? Nobody's read it, and yet it gets passed. With Nancy Pelosi, we've got to pass the bill to find out what's in it. That's no way to run a government, and let's not continue doing it. So let's keep an eye out. Let's keep an eye out for this stuff. So anyway, so thank you so much for joining us here today. I appreciate you taking the time. Let me see if I can bring up my slide. Here's the slide. I ask you to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. We need your help. We need to get this word out about all of these things. Now you know about the PRO Act. Did you know about the PRO Act before you saw this podcast? The answer is probably no. And so we need to get this information out, and we need your help to do it. So please like and subscribe. And remember, if you're one of the gig employees, or they're not employees, right? Gig workers, the gig worker who is having tax problem, and many do, what's the first thing you should do? Get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Go to freeirsbook.com, freeirsbook.com. Go to freeirsbook.com, get your free copy of my book. So thanks so much for joining us here today. Tomorrow is Watch Talk Radio, where we'll be on for about 2:15. Our guest tomorrow on Trust Radio Network is attorney Karen Conti, outstanding attorney. You won't want to miss this. Media personality, attorney extraordinaire. Lots of information about what's going on in the legal world, and that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow, and I hope you can join us. So thanks so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.